Yeah, actually, a range of people. I've always been quite collaborative, so if I've got an issue I want to resolve, I'll often talk to the people who are working on that issue, who have a really good understanding of it. If I'm trying to resolve something, personal or, some kind of conflict around my career or life, I actually turn to, family members, people who know me well, who know what makes me tick and what makes me happy, including, my partner, for instance. Just actually, I draw on the same kind of people that everyone else would in everyday life. I have a couple of role models because politics is a very particular environment to be in. So someone like Annette King, who's the longest standing woman in New Zealand Parliament. So she's someone who's got a lot of experience and expertise, and ultimately she just wants the people around her to be happy. So she's a good person to talk to. I remember when I first started volunteering for a member of Parliament. His name was Harry Dynhoven. He was the MP in New Plymouth. And I remember sitting in the back of his office when an elderly man came in, and he was looking after his grandchild, who was, I think, roughly 12 years old. And he had respiratory issues, was struggling to pay for his books, and was struggling to survive on his pension. And he came to see that MP as someone who might be able to make a difference for him. And I remember in that moment thinking, what an enormously privileged job to be able to help one person at a time, but also then make changes at a national level that could affect tens of thousands of people's lives. What other job does that? And I just thought that was extraordinary. That is what motivates me. That's what keeps me going. Just that idea that whether it's one person or 100,000 people, this is a pretty privileged place to be. I do think it's what we do for that next generation. We've always talked about being a country where we always gift something to the next generation that is better than what the generation before had, whether it's the nature of our environment, whether it's their opportunities in education and work, whether it's home ownership. But actually, I feel like we're at a crossroads now where we're potentially going to depart from that, and where things might actually be worse. I'm really optimistic that we can turn that around, but it does mean using this moment that we have to make that big decision that actually we do need to do things differently. The status quo means that we will continue to have the worst home ownership in 60 years, or our rivers continuing to be degraded, or children still living with not enough to get by. So I want that next generation to keep progressing, to keep having better. So that's, I think, our biggest challenge. Yeah, I remember sitting in Parliament one day. We have this moment where if someone passes away who used to be a parliamentarian, we will read out their name and we have a moment's silence. And it didn't take long for me actually to hit upon a name that I didn't know. And obviously I'm interested in politics, so I thought I knew many of those names and phases. And it occurred to me in that moment that actually politicians come and go, leaders even come and go, but it's what we leave behind that really makes a difference. So even if it's not me that's remembered, but someone can remember the moment where actually New Zealand became world leading for child wellbeing and regarded as the best place in the world to grow up, then I'll just be happy if that's what people remember, even if it's not my name. I just think who we are. I've always been, when I was living overseas, I was always incredibly proud to be a New Zealander. I loved what we'd done on the international stage, our reputation around standing up to apartheid and anti-nuclear movement. I want us to feel proud of New Zealand again. And that means what we do close to home, and it means what we do abroad as well. So really just remembering again what makes us proud: our equality, our fairness, our opportunity, our innovation, all of the things that makes us New Zealanders. I just want people to vote for that. And if they see that in whatever political party that may represent those values, vote for the values that make you feel proud to be a New Zealander. Yeah, I think that, at a political level, of course, we can make big structural change. But ultimately, it's often our community-based organisations, our faith-based groups, who see individual need in their communities. I grew up in a family that was very driven by service and faith, and I learnt very early on that actually what you do is as important as what you say. And I am hugely grateful for the movements and those groups that continue to walk the talk. And so please keep living those values, keep providing for the people around you, keep responding to need. Yes, we have a big burden and responsibility on our shoulders, but New Zealand will always be a great country as long as we look after one another individually in our own communities.